younger, a cousin of mine came to live with us. He was older than me and my sisters, maybe 16 or 17. We were the only family he had left in the world. He was the worst liar you'd ever meet. Anything he'd tell you was a lie. I liked him all right. We slept in a loft during the summer because it was cooler up there, me and him. And in the winters, we slept on the floor closer to the stove. My sisters had their own room. So one night my cousin wakes me up by punching me in the shoulder. And it's summer, so we're up in the loft. And my first thought was, when he wakes me up, is to push him, because I'm not happy at being waked up. But before I can say anything, he puts his hand over my mouth, and even though it's dark, I can hear that he's scared. Listen, he says, and so I listen real careful. It's this scratching like something on the roof, and the roof is right over our heads, mind you, because we're in a loft. I was a trifle rattled, but I wasn't having none of it. So I says to him, "It's just some raccoon or a cat." "No," says John. "I heard it before I waked you up. It's like footsteps, like someone's walking up there." I wasn't taking no truck with that. I told he was awful liar. So I went back to the sleep, but the next day my cousin tried to tell Pap about it. And Pap wasn't having no truck with it either. But one night later on, while he was lying, Pap sent out my youngest sister to fetch water from the pump we had in the back. After a while we heard Lily scream, and it was Ma who got up first and then Pap. The rest of us stayed at the table because he was like to get in trouble if Lily was hurt, and he was there to gloat. Soon enough, though, we heard Pap and Ma shouting too. So me and John went out to see if they needed our help. All they had was water. Lily carried out, and there wasn't no sign of her. At first I didn't understand what was going on, with both Ma and Pap shouting, and by that time my other sisters came out and they were started crying. And my cousin was just standing there in the yard looking off towards something. "It's the man walking yonder," he yells, and he's pointing across the field. No one's listening to him but me, and he keeps saying it. "It's the man walking yonder. It's the man walking yonder." You already know it was supper time, so you know the sun was setting and it was hard to see. But when I looked out over the field at the back of the house, the whole thing was lit up orange. And there was a row of big black trees that was the edge of the woods, you know. And I swear to you that I saw one of them trees moving, like a man walking away. But it couldn't have been a man, because there ain't no man that tall and skinny. Papa seen it too, I think. He took us inside and locked all the doors, and he made us keep still while he got out his rifle. We waited that all night, Ma crying the whole time. When the sun came up, we took a wagon into town and told folks what happened, though as I recall, nothing much came out of it. John ran off a few weeks later, and we got a new house closer to the mill where Papa worked. I still can't manage to look at trees during sunset though, especially not on windy days when they all move back and forth like a man walking away. The following is a witness account of an encounter with the Slender Man. After waking up with a jolt, the girl laid in bed a few seconds longer. Reaching over to switch on her bedside lamp, she tried to remember exactly what had stolen her sweet slumber away. When she couldn't, the brunette swung her legs over the side of the bed and heaved herself up. Checking the time on her phone, she snorted when she saw it was midnight, the witching hour. Knowing that sleep would only evade her, she left her bedroom for the kitchen, a good cup of coffee on her mind. As she passed by her front door, a chill ran down her spine. It's only winter, she told herself, focusing again on the coffee plan. Measuring out scoops of water and preparing her cup kept her occupied. But as the dark liquid boiled, she had nothing left to keep her mind from wandering off. The chill returned and she couldn't help but glance behind her front door. It stood there innocently enough, just like always. The deadbolt was still in place and she could see nothing amiss with it. Turning back to her coffee, she did her best to forget about the feeling. With her cup in hand, she started back towards her bedroom. As she walked by the front door, she decided that a quick glance out of the peephole would help her calm her restless thoughts. The chill worsened with each step she took towards the door and further away from the safety and warmth of her blankets. She pressed her empty hand against the cold metal door and took a deep breath before leading her eye to the peephole. At first, she could only see an inky blackness and somehow seemed to swirl in itself. When she blinked in surprise, the void melted away. She wished it hadn't. In its place, there stood what she could only guess was once a man. The limbs were long and inhumanly awkward, with bulky joints, branching off into several arms, not unlike the branches of a tree. The creature was draped in a black suit, somehow making the thing more nightmarish to her. The icing on the proverbial cake, however, was what passed as the hellish thing's face. It was as though her mind blurred the ghastly visage to spare itself further and shock and horror. She shoved herself away from the door with the hand still pressed against it. The scalding mug of coffee fell, the liquid burning her bare legs as she fell backwards and tried to crawl away from the door. She knew somehow that her mind hadn't been playing tricks on her. As she walked away from the door, she watched as tendrils as black as the void itself snake around through the cracks. The girl was trapped between the instinct to flee and the gut feeling to not turn back on the door. When the door jolted, the urge to flee overcame her and she slipped in the burning liquid as she tried to make it back to her room. She knew deep down that she was trapping herself in a corner where she had to get away from the door. The girl was halfway down the hallway when she heard the previously locked door creak open. She screamed and slipped into the wall, cracking her chin on it and stunning her. After that, there was only blackness. Nicole, a warm, male voice snapped the woman out of her trance. As she turned around, she was met by one of her sister's doctors. She nodded, not sure if she would say anything or even if she could find her voice if she did have something to say. That morning she had gotten an urgent phone call from the hospital saying that her sister, Lindsay, was there. Before they had even let her see her, the doctors had pulled her off to the side and insisted that they talk to her about what might have happened. Phrases like self-inflicted and assault had been thrown around. Nicole felt her mind reel. She still hadn't fully understood what they had been saying until she saw Lindsay with her own eyes. Her little sister had a bandage wrapped around her head, covering both of her ears as well as her eyes. They said it was to keep her now deafened eyes from drying out and try to keep infection out of the wounds Lindsay had made to her ears. The doctors had guessed that either she or someone else had jammed a pencil into them to keep her off balance or to deafen herself against something. There was the mix of first and second degree burns on her hands, legs and feet from what was assumed to be the coffee her neighbors found slipped all over the entry of her apartment. As Nicole walked into her sister's hospital room the first time, she thought she had spied the silhouette of a man in the window. That, she knew, was impossible. Her sister's room was on the third story of the hospital. was walking home from school and I saw a girl in the street playing with some other kids. How I wished I could play along. I live in an orphanage run by Catholic nuns and I sleep in a dorm with 10 other children. They usually ignore me, so I'm pretty much alone there. Yesterday I noticed a strange door that I hadn't seen before. It was blood red and was securely locked. I asked the head nun and she told me to never go in there. I wondered why, and each day it began to make me very curious. One night when everyone else was asleep, I decided I would sneak inside. It was dark and silent in my dorm room. I carefully went to the head nun's office and opened her desk. Inside, I found her key ring. I grabbed it and made my way to the strange door. I tried every key in the lock and eventually one of them opened it. I looked inside, but there was nothing but an empty room. Just as I was about to close the door, I heard a faint whisper. I went deeper into the room. It seemed to go on forever until I came to another door. I opened it and inside there was a woman crying on a bed. She was wearing a gold locket. I sat down beside the woman and hugged her. She turned to face me. Her eyes were black as coal and her smile was crooked and evil. By the time I realized what's going on, it was too late. She stabbed me. As I lay there dying, I thought that if I had only listened to the head nun, I would have survived. 2 men in police uniforms arrived to investigate. How did she die, Phil? I don't know. She was found next to a gold locket. Inside the locket was a picture of the girl in the arms of an unidentified woman. The inscription on the locket read, "My baby and I, together forever." Alice and Amanda. My name is Alice. I have green eyes and black hair. I'm always teased at school. I wish I wasn't, but I am. My whole family hates me except for my father. My mother used to love me, but that was before she was mysteriously killed. Today, as usual, my father picked me up from school. On the way home, my brother hit me as normal. A girl I had never seen before had moved into the house next door, so I went over to say hello. She was a pretty girl with black and blue eyes. She smiled at me and said her name was Amanda. I asked her if her parents were home and she said no. I asked her if I could come in and she said sure. We sat on her couch and talked for a while. It was 12 at night when we finished having fun. She told me I had to leave. I asked her why, but she never answered, so I got up and left. The next day after school I went to her house and the same thing happened. I stayed till 12 and was told to leave. After a week of this, I demanded to stay past 12 and she pushed me to her door. I asked her why I couldn't stay and she said her parents didn't like late guests. I then left and told her I would see her tomorrow. As I was walking home, I thought for a moment. I had never seen her parents. What did they look like? I climbed the stairs to my room and looked out of the windows to theirs. They had left it open and there was a tree next to it. I decided to climb inside. As I did, fell to the floor. Amanda came to me with a knife and said, "I told you not to stay. My parents hate late guests." She smiled and it scared me. Never before had I seen her look so evil. I ran to the closet door and opened it. 2 dead bodies fell out. "Oh my God," shouted Amanda. "You let out my parents? Now you're gonna get it." She hid under the bed that was in the room and I tried to dart for the window, but something grabbed me. It was one of the dead bodies. It picked up the knife that was still lying on the floor and stabbed me with it. As her parents dragged my body into the closet, Amanda mouthed something to me. I loved you. I cried a little because few people loved me. I died in that room and I still haunt it to this day. If you love me, you may live, but if you hate me like the rest, you will die.